Hey you guys, Meredith Holly here. I'm a lawyer, life coach, and I help women stop toxic work environments and sexual harassment without quitting their jobs. Sometimes I do that by working with their companies. I am supposed to be on a live with my friend Robert Heath, who I'm super excited about, so I'm hoping that he joins us. Oh, it looks like he may be around and maybe ready to join us. And so, Robert, I'm really excited about talking to because he has a really different. He has a really different background than me. And so I feel like we'll have an interesting conversation. What we want to talk about is the Kavanaugh confirmation, leadership, and influence. And so Robert helps businesses and organizations with leadership. And so he is just going to be an interesting person to have on. And so I'm going to try to bring him on and see if he can come on. And so it might just take a second. So while he is coming on, I had a couple thoughts that I wanted to share. I've had a lot of people sort of check in with me, see how I'm doing after the confirmation. I know there's been a lot of fallout. There's been a lot of emotion and a lot of people feeling really devastated and really upset about the Kavanaugh nomination. And I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think it's fair however people want to feel about it. But I also have a little bit of a different perspective that I want to share. I think things have been sexist, things have been bad. We've had people like this for years and years in politics. And so now we're finally talking about it. Now we're finally making a difference. And so I feel really inspired by what's happened, and I feel kind of excited about it, and I don't want to be a sociopath about it, but that's my perspective. So I want to bring Robert on, if he can come on. It says it's adding him. It's connecting. Are you there? Yay!
Hey, it
We
worked.
did it! Woo!
Thank you for dealing with my tardiness. Like I said, I had a client call that went a little bit long, and then I had some stuff on the stove that I had to turn off too. So
well, I don't want your house to burn down just because of a conversation about politics. So.
But no, it's going good. Life is good though. We got it all taken care
of. Good. So introduce yourself so that I introduced you a little bit earlier, but so that people who know me can find out who you are.
Awesome. Well, hello everybody. Thank you all for showing up. And if you're friends of Meredith, then that means you have chosen well, because she is a phenomenal person. I am Robert Heath Sr., Robert Anthony Heath Sr. I'm the CEO of Legacy Leadership Consulting, and I'm also the author of Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to Getting the Best Out of Your Team, regardless of who you lead. Basically, what I do is I help leaders to optimize their teams, to get the best out of their teams on every project, and to make sure that they're getting the value out of them that they're putting into them with regard to salary and or time.
So I love how you say that you're the winningest defense counsel. So that's what I'm going to put in my notes on the video.
Oh yeah. And while I'm on this call, I forgot my former life, I was a lawyer at the busiest defense shop in the United States Marine Corps, Camp Lejeune, the Eastern Region DSO. And I was, and still am, to the best of my knowledge, the winningest defense counsel in the history of that office. I took 11 cases to trial, and 7 of them ended in acquittal. So I was kind of disappointed. My last case, I had got pulled back in. I had been out of trial work for about a year, and we took a case to general court martial. The guy was facing 11 years for some stupid stuff, but he wound up getting just reduced in rank. And so technically it was a loss, but I still count that one as a win.
It could have been worse without you, right?
It could have been a lot worse, and especially because it was really stupid stuff that he was dealing with. And the thing that he got found guilty of was something that he had already admitted to doing. So it was like,
Well,
I mean,
you don't have a
was
lot
he
to work with there. Yeah.
exactly right? And don't get me wrong, it was violating a rule basically. But in the Marine Corps, you can be convicted of a crime for violating a rule. It's not just like a slap on the wrist. You can get a slap on the wrist, but it was a political time, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So you and I have really different backgrounds, because my background is representing victims and yours is representing defendants. And so, but I feel like we have often similar-ish perspectives.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
Yes.
your perspective on all of this. And I know, I don't know, did you follow a lot of the Kavanaugh confirmation process? Were you?
I did, and I want to go ahead really quickly and throw out there. I represented victims as a defense counsel, but my pedigree is a little bit larger than just. I'm sorry, I represented defendants as a defense counsel.
I was wondering how that worked with the victims.
Yeah, no, I represented the defendants as a defense counsel, but one of the things that I came to that job from a career in victim representation. I was a teacher before. I coached girls basketball. I always worked with women, and I consider myself an ally towards women. And one of the interesting things when I went to the Marine Corps to be an attorney, in the Marine Corps, you don't know if you're going to be a defense attorney, prosecuting attorney. You get that's the job. You get the job that you get. And one of the things that was interesting about that was I went to the Marine Corps originally wanting to prosecute sexual assault trials, sexual assault cases. And so my time in defense really helped me to see different sides of the issue. Also being my mock trial that I did as I was becoming a Marine Corps lawyer, I was actually a prosecuting attorney on a sexual assault case, and that was a really interesting experience. I'm also a self-defense instructor.
I was going to say, yeah. And I feel like a lot of what you've talked about in your self-defense trainings for women is really similar to the work that we do with like mindset work of like, you have to lean into the difficulty. You have to expect life to be hard.
Right. And just the fact, the systems that we have set up, like a lot of times, and this is in the conversation about Kavanaugh, right? A lot of the problems that I have with the conversation in general is that we create this utopia where these are easy decisions, where these are easy discussions, where we should just know, right? Like
on both sides, right?
On both sides, exactly, right. Guys, girls, everybody, right? And it's one of those things. Like I was just watching the View the other day. I was watching a clip of the View.
I love how you watch the View. I was like, you'll have to tell me everything the View thinks about this.
Yeah, I love watching the View for clips. Like I don't watch the entire show. Like I go and on their YouTube clips, I can deal with like 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
But they had a senator on there, the senator from Nebraska. I can't think of his name right now. Not Orrin Hatch, the other one.
I'm terrible at names.
Yeah, he's a younger guy, but anyway, he was explaining why he voted yes on Kavanaugh. And he was explaining that he read through, he put 150 hours into reading through the documents and looking at the FBI investigation. And him and Joy Behar got into this argument about, well, don't you believe her? And there's this kind of they've created this thing where you either believe her or you believe him. Like there's no middle ground for you to believe that something bad happened to her, but that she might be mistaken on some of the facts. And when what I fear is that when we create that place where she's either right or you're not believing her, you're not listening to her, you're not hearing her. The problem with that is that you actually poison the well for everybody that's trying to come forth and tell their story, right? Because you're telling me that I have to overlook the fact that nobody can say that they were at this party. I have to overlook the fact that she doesn't even remember where the party was and can't point it out on a map. I have to overlook all of these different things. The thing that she's certain of is that sometime in her life, Brett Kavanaugh did this thing to her. Those were, and I listened to her entire testimony, and I listened to the questions that she was asked by the special prosecutor and all that type of stuff. And when you boil it down, I am firmly convinced that something happened to her that she thought was horrible. I am even convinced that probably Brett Kavanaugh was there at whatever time this was, and he probably did it to her. I am also convinced that the facts, the way that they set them out, leave themselves such that everybody at the party could have been so drunk that they don't remember what the heck happened that day, especially since it was 36 years ago. And so she could be telling the truth. And I, as a third party outside observer, listening to 6 people say nothing happened and one person say something happened, could be honestly perplexed that I have no idea what to do now.
Okay, but here's my counterpoint to that as it relates to this particular situation. There's been a lot, and I'm glad you brought it up, because there's been a lot of talk about innocent until proven guilty. We need to like have the facts and have the evidence before we convict someone, which I totally understand is the criminal justice system. It is not the job application system.
I agree.
And I think that if you're applying for a job in the highest court in the land, you're the one that has to prove, like the burden is on him to prove he's squeaky clean, not on her to prove something happened. I think it's a shift of burden.
I don't disagree with you, and I'm glad you brought that point up. I only would tweak it a little bit. The burden is not on him to prove that he's squeaky clean. The burden is on the decision makers to say whether or not he actually is qualified for that job, even in light of this. And here's the thing I heard, and I don't know if it was, I think it was Stephen Colbert was saying it on his show. He was like, if you were applying for a job at Arby's and somebody accused you of sexual assault, they don't have to say, I believe them, I don't believe them. They can say the fact that you have this accusation is enough. You're disqualified for the job until you clear up.
Right.
Right. And that's the thing. And that can kind of get into the point again. And I think that on the liberal side, I feel like they're misconstruing the argument. And that's why it's not gaining traction, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to label him a rapist, and they're trying to label him all these things that are unnecessary for him to not be qualified for the job.
Yeah. All you have to say is he yelled at the Senate.
Like, exactly, right? Yeah. But when you swing for the fences and you're trying to, castrate them in public, and everybody's like, well, I can't go that far with you. And that's what they're getting. And they've given cover to all of the regular, moderate, like thinking people in the middle who are like, I don't really know what happened, right? Like I can give you, I don't think that dude should be on the Supreme Court. There's a lot of people that feel that way, but there's really nobody. And I won't say nobody, the people who have taken the lion's share of the TV time have not been articulating that point. They have not been winning the day with the argument that there's 25 other people on that list, none of whom are accused of sexual assault.
So this is my point, is that like say there's a daycare down the street and they're hiring, and they get like 20 applications, and one of the people is accused of molesting a child by some moms. They write in letters with no proof, and just because it's innocent until proven guilty, they hire that person over the other qualified people who were not accused of it. Like it would never happen. Like it would be so it's so dangerous.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong. And I think that, again, when we talk about innocent until proven guilty, especially having been a defense attorney and having a 70% win rate, just to give you, like, I point that out not to say that I'm good, right? Because I wasn't good. Those cases suck, and those people should not have been at trial. Like, if I can win 70% of the cases that I went and took to trial, nobody's that good with smoke and mirrors, right? Like the reason that I won those cases because the guys that they accused of doing things didn't do what they accused them of doing. We have to realize that there's a reason that in our Constitution, when you look throughout all of history, the reason that we have the state doesn't have the right to take away your life, liberty, property without due process is because it used to be the other way.
Right.
It used to be that the king could come by and say, "Ooh, you got a pretty wife," and go take her. Right? Or they could go and say, that's a nice 6 acres that you have. You're making a lot of money off of that. Guess what? We own it now.
Or you stole a loaf of bread to feed your child. Now you're in prison for the rest of your life, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. There were all of those types of things that existed, and our due process rights and the idea of innocent until proven guilty puts the burden on anybody that's accusing you of anything. Right. Because also we've got to be careful. And this is the piece that I don't like. There's a difference between being criminally liable for something, right? Being proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and being proven guilty enough for me to not want to hang out with you or not
Right.
associate with you,
Right.
right? Preponderance of the evidence is proven guilty, right? Like just so that we're clear, if I believe more that you did it, I believe that you didn't do it, you're proven guilty,
right? Because
right? And
testimony is
those
enough. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
and testimony can be enough,
Yeah.
right? Because like I said, I've had sexual assault cases, and testimony was what was there, and the testimony wasn't enough. And the reason the testimony wasn't enough isn't because, you know, the person didn't get the opportunity to talk to NCIS and to do everything and to go over their story over and over and over again. It was just because what their recitation of the facts were did not amount to a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Their recitation of the facts amounted to a bad experience for them. It amounted to something that they didn't like, but it wasn't criminal. And even more so, the person who they were accusing of doing something to them in that instance had no way of knowing that they weren't enjoying or that it was something that they didn't like.
I think it's
and I say that,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And I say that because, and again, this goes back to that one case that I was telling you about, where the case actually wound up not going to trial. And the main reason it wound up not going to trial was because in the questioning of the complaining witness, the argument was, I did these things. He didn't make me do these things. I did them. I kissed him. He kissed me, and then I kissed him back. He put my hand down there, and then he took his hand off, and I kept doing it. But in her head, she was thinking, but this is all he'll want. Mm-hmm. And then every time he wanted something else, she felt like it was a bad thing, but she didn't tell him, stop, no, I don't want to do this, or any of those types of things. Now, should he have asked questions, and like, are there good things that he should have done? Of course. Would he get a counseling from me on the appropriate ways to deal with women and the appropriate ways to be a lover, right? Yes, definitely. But it's different when we talk about criminal, right, versus mistakes, versus honest mistakes. And those are the types of things. And the reason that I point that out is because when we talk about innocent until proven guilty, mm-hmm. that's in the context of improper behavior. Mm-hmm. It's not in the context just of, did he do something? Is something there? But when we're saying that he did something and we're giving him negative or malice or intentional, we're giving him a criminal intent or even a molestation intent, right? That is something that, yes, testimony is enough to prove, but the testimony itself has to prove out the thing.
Well, and it even in, I mean, I definitely have clients who, when they come to me, explain to me why everything was their fault. And then the more I talk to them about it, the more they're like, no, actually, I've just been trained to take the blame for everything that's happening. Right. And that's not, like, I asked them, what were the words that were said? What were the actions that were taken? And when they play mm-hmm. out those actions and those words, they realize that it wasn't them who was initiating. But women have often been so trained to absorb social responsibility for every situation that even in testimony, it's a really difficult, a difficult place to be in for someone who's used to explaining why everything's their fault.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong. This goes back to the point that I made at the beginning. This is the quagmire that exists here. The fact that the person who was assaulted or has been violated may not even themselves be able to tell the story in such a way as to convince external people. They just know what they know internally what happened, or they're not even clear internally what happened. Don't get me wrong. The point that I make is this: we need to hear everybody's story. Mm-hmm. Everybody that feels like they have been violated needs to be listened to, needs to be supported, and needs to be loved in that space, and to be made to feel safe, and to be able to redeem their like restore their power, power, right?
Yeah.
That is a separate process mm-hmm. altogether from then ascribing blame for that situation to another person. Mm-hmm. And it is okay for me to work 100% to make that person, to help that person to feel whole again, while at the same time feeling like I don't know what I can do to ascribe blame to another person, because everything that we have been going through, everything you've been talking about, it hasn't gotten me to the point where I can say, yeah, I need to go and do something to that person. Mm-hmm. I can love you and not hate him.
And
And
even,
that's the thing.
yeah, and that's what I teach with my clients is like, how do you recover? How do you reclaim your power? How do you get through this situation no matter what happens to the other person? Because
Exactly.
it is a totally separate process. And I think it's an interesting thing with like even considering the innocent until proven guilty, because that was like that rule is there to prevent an oppressive government, right? And so,
Exactly.
and to protect the population from an oppressive government. And so, but then when you have a victim, they don't want an oppressive government, but they often want to have a government that takes a parental role, almost like a disciplinary role, to step in and take care of, like, there is a breach of trust, I think, when the rules create a situation where the government can't provide an external remedy.
I agree, except for the fact that I think that that is part of the kind of construct that we have put together,
Right,
where we're expecting the government to resolve all remedies.
right.
And I
And
am
it
a
just
big
doesn't.
proponent. Right,
Yeah.
it's impossible. It's an
Mhm.
unreasonable expectation, right? One of the first steps of empowering leadership and legacy leadership is examining and evaluating your expectations. In this sense, what we're asking the government to do is to solve everything.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the Declaration of Independence, but there's the part that I love that I think a lot of people kind of skip over is like everybody knows all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? The sentence right after that says, and in order to secure these rights, men create governments, right?
Hmm.
The purpose of government is to secure a right for you vis-a-vis other people in the society that is already yours.
Hmm.
And government is something that is created by us to do a job for us. But sometimes we have to be honest about whether or not government is actually capable of doing that
Yeah.
job.
Or the
And
appropriate.
because
Yeah.
we passed it to government, it doesn't absolve us from the responsibility. It doesn't absolve us in communities. It doesn't absolve us in families. It doesn't absolve us as individuals from the duty of maintaining our space, our rights vis-a-vis our
Right.
other people in society.
Right. And
And
respecting
that's
ourselves and expecting to have those rights. Yeah.
exactly. And expecting to set boundaries and expecting to set rules and
Yeah.
not looking out for other people to tell us what the rules are, but having those tough discussions and saying, I don't like people touching me. I don't care if the
Right.
movies say that they're supposed to touch me on the first date. I don't want to kiss anybody till the third date. And
Right.
being comfortable with that space. And there's a lot of, that's what we talk about, the mindset work. A lot of my self-defense work is in
Yeah.
setting boundaries, enforcing boundaries, and being comfortable with the boundaries that you set, being comfortable with who you are. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody can ever come in and do something to you. But it does mean that the narrative changes when you have had these discussions, when you've had these thoughts, when you've decided where your boundaries are, because now you know where the points are that they crossed the boundary and what you did. And when I'm telling that story to another person, right, it's a completely different story if I say, I locked my door and then I went into my bedroom and locked my door, which is my other routine. And they broke through that door and then they broke through my bedroom door. And now we're standing in my bedroom and then I shot them, right? There's a different story that everybody understands versus, so I leave all my doors in my house open, and this person had been over my house before, and they came into, and they knew that I left all my doors open, and they came into my doors, they came into the bedroom, and then I shot them, right? Same story, same actions, except for the person had to go through two barriers and two obvious boundaries to get to that same place in the one story, whereas in the other one, it's a lot muddier. And it's not
Right.
saying it could have still been accosting you. You could still be
Totally.
justified. The experience in the room could have been the
Yeah.
same. Outside observer
Is going to have a
is
different view of it. Yeah. And I think that that's a good, like I always say to people, like 90% of wrong things are not illegal, but it's still wrong. It doesn't mean it's not
Exactly.
wrong. It's just not like the law is like a super, not a helicopter parent. It's like a
Right.
super
Yeah.
detached, you come to me.
Right. Right. The law is like, this is obviously wrong. That's what it's supposed to be there for.
Yeah.
The law is supposed to be the things in the social contract that we have all agreed on. You don't do this.
That are so wrong that, yeah.
Exactly. It is obvious. It's not even gonna be difficult. One of the
Yeah.
problems, and we can talk about, jurisprudence and all the rest of that type of stuff as well. One of the problems I feel is that we have so many laws that are so vague and that are so open-ended, which is one of the reasons why we can't agree on when somebody breaks it. Right?
Yeah.
Because the law isn't serving its purpose, which is to be a barrier, a boundary of good behavior.
I wonder what you think about this, though, because I think there's the government aspect of how we respond to assault allegations and any kind of wrongdoing allegations. But then there's also sort of the power dynamic between men and women, that like women are raised to that men are predators and to fear men and to not go outside and to not go to the parking lot and to get your keys out and all these things that we're trained to perceive men as a threat, which I think makes us less likely to defend ourselves because we're attributing more power to men than actually exists. What do you think about?
Exactly. Love the fact that you just said that. And the crucial thing is the flip side of it, in that men being predators is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
The issue is, what do you do to predators? We know that lions and tigers and bears are predators, but guess what? We're humans. We kill lions and tigers and bears when they come in on our property and mess with us.
Right.
We don't go around and be like, oh my God, lions and tigers and bears.
I don't want to hurt
We're
your
like,
feelings.
oh, there's a wolf problem. Hey, let's get a group of people together. We going hunting. Right?
Yeah.
There's a difference in understanding that you have dominion, you have ownership, you have this is your space. There's a difference in that. And that piece that you're talking about, and with the Women in Power program that I teach with self-defense, one of the things that we talk about is your body is yours. And not only is it yours, how dare somebody try to violate it? And here are the tools that you can use to let them know they better not never try that again.
Right.
And the reason that you do that is not because you can prevent anything. Like, any hunter in the woods can get caught by a bear, but hunters don't go in the woods afraid of bears, right? They pay attention. They know the bears are out there, and they have what they need to kill bears.
Right.
The people who get mauled by bears and have problems with bears are the ones who go into the woods unawares, not knowing, not the bear's power, because everybody knows how strong bears are, not knowing their own power to deal with the bears.
Yeah. That's a really
that's what our society, that's where we fail our women so much, in creating this archetype of the weak. And we treat women like a second-class citizenry.
Yeah.
Even in our chivalry and our desire to protect and take care of women. I mean, we had this conversation when we were talking about women in the military.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about it is, do we care about women in the military because of the fact that women are inherently incapable of fighting, which we know is not the case? Or is it because of some social archetype that we've created where women shouldn't fight? And how is that social archetype hurting or helping our women? I am a proponent. I believe I've taught my wife how to fight jiu-jitsu, how to play jiu-jitsu and defend herself. I've taught my daughter how to defend herself. And I tell my wife all the time, if something goes wrong and I start getting screws loose, I want you to be able to take me out.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose. I don't want me to be the reason, right? Like, I'm the thing that protects you from me, right? That puts you in a position that is one down. I don't want you there. You are my equal. You are my partner. I want you to be able to deal with me if I go crazy for some reason, right? And that's the goal. That's the idea, because I feel like she is my equal, and I want her to be able to live in that space. And I think that's what we have to do in society. Kind of bringing it all full circle with the Kavanaugh nomination. The interesting thing that I think about this, and we talked about this a little bit offline, the Supreme Court has always been the part of government that is most akin to leadership, in my opinion. The executive branch has the power of the sword. The legislative branch has the power of the purse. Those two branches can actually make things happen. They can make you do things in society. The Supreme Court can only influence. They can only say, this is what we think should happen. If we disagree with the Supreme Court, we can go and pass a law and make it the case, right? We thought slavery was bad. The Supreme Court kept saying slavery was good. 13th Amendment. Now the Supreme Court doesn't get to say anything about slavery anymore.
Yep.
Right? And so as a leader, what a lot of people don't realize is when you use your power of the purse or the sword, when you use your sticks to lead people, you don't have as much influence as you think. And it actually takes a lot more work, as we see. It takes a lot more work for the executive branch to get things done. It takes a lot more work for the legislative branch to get things done. The Supreme Court handles about 100 cases a year. And by their influence, marriage equality happened.
Right.
By their influence, desegregation of schools happened.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Right? By their influence,
abortion
by them saying, this is what we
became
think.
Safe.
That,
yeah.
Right? All of those things took place in our country, and they made cultural shifts. And the problem that I see with the Kavanaugh nomination, external to all the stuff we've been discussing today, is that by putting somebody on the court in the manner in which we did it, it undermines that influence authority that the court has.
I totally agree.
It puts somebody on there who has said, I think it's a Clinton conspiracy, and has yelled at people. It's shown himself to not have the type of decorum that we expect of our justices. Now, would I have acted similarly if I was in a similar situation? Possibly, but here's the thing. I would have taken myself out of consideration at that point in time, because this is what I know. If my family was that important to me, if all of this stuff was that important to me, there is no job on the face of this planet that is so important as to go through that. I have served my country as a United States Marine. That was the most important job that was worth me losing time from my family and losing all the rest of that. There is not another job that exists that I would put my family through that for. I can't say that he should have, but if he decided to, he also decided to have a certain level of decorum. He also decided to comport himself in a way that is befitting of the office. And I think that he dropped the ball on that. And by the Republican-led Senate rushing that process through and going ahead and confirming him, I think that they win a political victory, but they undermine the very system, the very bedrock of that influence that the court has. And I think it's going to come back to bite not just them, but the country.
I think so too, because it's a decades long issue at this point.
Right.
It's not a term issue. Yeah.
Right. Because he's what, in his 50s, right?
And I think the other Republican justices are all around that age too. So we're going to have five Republican court. Right.
And I'm not even thinking about the rulings that they come out with, but this is an attorney, right? Motions to strike judges is like, that's the easiest thing to write. And he wrote the motion himself, right? Like any case that has to do with the president getting indicted, any case that has to do with sexual assault, any case that has to deal with any political issue, he's going to be getting motions out. Like, he has just become a problem. And it's so funny, and not to cross-pollinate conversations, but a lot of people talk about the reason that a lot of NFL owners didn't want Colin Kaepernick on their teams was because of the fact that it pulls away from their ability to focus on football, the locker room, the team, etc. Him being on the court, if you just take the ACLU, you don't even got to do the rest of the lawyers in the country with their political affiliation, but if you look at the ACLU, he is going to be a lightning rod for challenges for the next 30 years.
At least, right?
Right. And I think that undermines it undermines our ability to look at the court and say, okay, they're calling balls and strikes. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They say what we want about what they think. We know that they uphold the dignity of the office and all those other types of things. I don't feel like, not only can I say that about Judge Kavanaugh, but I don't feel like a lot of the country feels comfortable saying that about Judge Kavanaugh. I mean, as evasive as he was about answering questions, the whole "I like beer" over and over and over again. Like, there's so many things that he did that can be panned, and I was frustrated because, especially, did you see when he was talking to Klobuchar, Senator
Yeah,
Klobuchar?
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, that is
Right.
not. Would any judge, if a witness talked like that to someone, ask, any judge would be like, step out of the courtroom until you can calm down, come back, or a decision against
Exactly.
you. Like, that is a
Right.
sanctionable way to talk to,
Contempt of court, right?
right?
Or when he was talking to Dick Durbin, that was another place where I was like, he was disingenuous. He was playing politics. And I don't like a judge that plays politics in general. He was sitting there, Dick Durbin was saying, do you want an investigation? Now, as a defense attorney, right, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him like, no, you don't want an investigation. Because guess what? An investigation isn't going to clear me because it's really hard to prove that something didn't happen, right? Like, that's not going to happen. But on the flip side.
But as a political issue, yes, I want an investigation because I want justice to be upheld.
Right. Like, and you can have either opinion, right? You can be like, yes, I want them to do an investigation so that they can show that there's nothing here. Blah, blah. Yeah. Like, you can have that opinion, I'm good. Or you can have the opinion of, no, we both know that an investigation won't clear me. An investigation will leave us exactly where we are, where some people think I did something, some people don't, and it won't help me at all, and it'll just put my family and everybody else through something, right? You can say one of those two things. When you say, well, I'll do what the committee decides. Really? Really? What you just said was, I know the Republicans want to do something to make this go through, and I'm siding with the president, and I'm a political actor saying what I need to say as a political actor, not as a justice who just cares about the law. And that partiality, that it's almost like he wanted the job so much, I don't want him to have it.
Yeah. Ugh. It was, I didn't honestly watch his full testimony because I found it to be just one of those experiences of watching someone who's accused of something be the victim in the situation, which to me is just like a frustrating thing to, like, it's annoying to me. So I was like, I can't watch this guy do this thing because I do not feel sorry for you if you don't become a Supreme Court justice and you just have your Court of Appeals position for the rest of your life. Like, I think you're gonna be okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't feel
bad for you. And the thing, and it's funny because, like, part of the reason that I watch it is because there is the other side of accusation.
Yeah.
There is the other side, and I mean, like, Megyn Kelly has people on all the time who were accused of rape, and then they found out, nope, it didn't happen, or you didn't do it. And for us to, and like, Sunny on The View always uses this statistic, and she's always like, only 2 to 8% of accusations are false. And we were talking about this before. I think that, again, that muddies the waters. 2 to 8% of accusations are proven false. So if we go through accusations, we say we got 100 accusations, 2 to 8 of those, they've actually proven that what they were saying did not happen.
Which is the same rate as any other crime.
Exactly, which is the same rate as any other crime. Now, when you look at that other 92% of accusations, it's not that all of the other accusations are true on their face. It's that there is something tangible there. There's something actionable there. But a majority of them don't come to fruition in a criminal conviction because of the fact that we can't get to to a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. But I will even point people to the difficulty of getting to a preponderance of the evidence standard, and I'll point you to the case of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston was the quarterback of Florida State, right? He went through, and the district attorney would not take the case because he's like, we don't have enough evidence here. But then he also went to the university had a court. They had a federal a state judge preside, and each side got to present their sides. They brought witnesses. They did it just like a trial. It was almost like an arbitration in a trial. They got to talk, and at the end of the trial, the judge came down and said, you both sound credible. I can't decide between which of you is telling the truth and which of you is not. It's not that I disbelieve you and I believe you, or I disbelieve you and I believe you. He said, literally, I can't throw your case out, and I can't say that he was guilty. So many cases come down to that place. Now, where do we classify that statistic? Was she telling the truth? Was she lying? We don't know. And that's where a lot of cases come down. And I think that, but it doesn't matter.
I agree, but I also think, though, I will say this as my personal experience. I don't
Mhm.
have a lot of experience of people questioning my integrity, except when I've
Mhm.
challenged a man in an authority position. And that's like not a lot of times, but I like to speak my mind. Um, but in my experience of being challenged on my integrity, I've honestly been shocked. Like, it is a weird experience to have for someone like Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, right? Who is a professor,
Mhm.
who is like just the idea that you would be like, oh, this woman, it might be a liar, and she's so
Right.
committed to her lie that she is willing to fly on an airplane, which she's afraid to do, and sit in front of Congress
Mhm.
and lie because she's so committed to it, is like
Mhm.
such an outrageous thing that we wouldn't normally
Right.
even give time to, right?
I agree, and don't get me wrong, and those are the people that are saying that she's lying, right? Those are the
Right.
people that are like, and the counterpoint to that is only 2 to 8% of people lie, right? And
Right.
don't get me wrong, I will go there. I think that both people that are like she's telling the truth because only 2 to 8% of people lie, are using the edge of the statistical range, and the people that are
Mm-hmm.
like she's lying,
Mm-hmm.
right, are using the edge of the statistical range. My point is, she could be telling the truth verbatim of what she remembers. And what we know about the brain and how the brain remembers things and how we tell ourselves stories and how things happen, we also know that in the last 36 years, there's a lot of stuff that can happen that could have made Brett Kavanaugh be the person that she sees as being who assaulted her, and that not be the case, and or and I'm not saying that I believe that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just because
yeah, yeah.
you're
Whatever.
a lawyer,
Tell me your
right?
nonsense for a little while longer.
it's
I'll listen.
it's a possibility, right? I just want to, and I want to, because it's a legitimate possibility. We've seen cases where people have displaced who
Yeah.
did stuff to
Yeah.
them, right? Children do it a lot,
Right.
right? When parents or somebody
And
close to
there's
them
like
hurts them,
robust criminal defense law in every state about that issue. And yeah.
exactly, right? And it's not to say that I think that happened here, but it is a legitimate possibility that the third party observer has to consider if they are going to be an actual objective arbiter of truth.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece that we have to look at is she says that it happened, but she doesn't know when it happened,
Mm-hmm.
which, in what scenario other than sexual assault do you get to say somebody stole money from me or did this to me or did that to me or whatever the case may be, but I don't know when it happened and I
I
don't have any other evidence to do it, to say anything about it. And here, I may hear you and be like, man, that's messed up, but what are the questions I'm going to ask you before I go and confront that person on your behalf?
Right. And I see your point. And we've talked about that before, about the difference between believing somebody and then taking it on ourselves to go punish the other person
Or
because
even
we're
to
so
confront the other person.
right. Right. But I think like I take your point, but I think that there is like what about like he copied my tests in school, he plagiarized, like often the stuff that you're talking about has external evidence that is
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
in this kind of situation, when you're not talking about a criminal investigation and you're just talking about there are enough women who dislike this man enough to put their names on public documents talking about sexual assault, it's like a
Right.
different.
Right. No, don't get me wrong. And again,
Yeah,
in the silo of Christine Blasey Ford, we've
yeah,
got this one conversation,
yeah.
right? Which is, I can, especially, and here's the thing, if he was blackout drunk, which means that he actually has no recorded memory of
Mm-hmm.
this ever happening, I can completely understand him. And this is what, when I listened to the testimony, the thing that I was playing in my head, I can completely understand him feeling like this never happened and her vividly remembering that it
Yeah.
happened. Those two things existing in the same time continuum, space time continuum, and me as the outside observer not being able to tell which one is true.
Because both of them might be telling the truth to their best
Exactly.
recollection. Yeah.
Right? To their best recollection.
I mean,
And
the other,
it does.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that doesn't mean, again, that doesn't speak to should he be hired, should he be any of this,
Right.
but part of it, the outrage and the true emotion that he may be feeling, that his wife is getting death threats, that his children are getting, like, all of that type of stuff, right? That could be legitimate
Yeah.
feelings that are not the poor me, I am the, the golden child who is getting mistreated, but are legitimate, like, fatherly,
Yeah.
husbandly feelings that. And so one of the things that I do that on the other side, and that was the pushback that I was giving, is just that these are real people
Yeah.
in these scenarios. And even if we think he did something wrong, a lot of times what we also do is we try to heap upon the people that are involved this wrong, like it's obvious to everybody that it's wrong.
Right. Like
Like,
a lot of times with my clients, I see them want to prove that the other person is evil on top of proving that they did the crime. And I'm like, you can let them be not evil. Like, you don't have to take that burden on you. Don't.
right.
Yeah.
That's what we try to do in society as well. Like, we've got to castigate them. They've got to be horrible. They've got to be evil. Or they could just be somebody that did something wrong to another person, and they can learn that they shouldn't do that and everything else. Like, there's a spectrum of abuse, there's a spectrum of assault, there's a spectrum of all these things, because there are people that are crossing a line, and it's a line that should not be crossed, but there's Jeffrey Dahmer on the other side. Like, they're
Yeah.
not the same. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and part in the discussion of this, trying to make everybody the boogeyman, and the evil rapist who's a predator of women and is looking and targeting and breaking into houses and like, that's not everybody. And what you do when you make that the archetype of sexual assault is you make a safe haven for everybody else who's
Yeah.
not fitting that description.
Right. I think so too. And you also, what I see a lot of times with my clients who are doing that is that they also are proving their own extreme victimization on top of trying to, like, if this person's so evil, then they are so oppressed and miserable and powerless and helpless, and like they're proving their own devastation. And often, I mean, I think sexual assault, sexual harassment, violence are things that people overcome and can move through. And if we're trying to prove that we can't get through it, that's like awful.
Exactly. Right. And it goes back to that bedrock principle of establishing boundaries,
Yeah.
and not needing external validation for those boundaries to be valid.
Right.
Right. The idea that if I don't want you to touch me, I have to get everybody to agree that you touching me is bad.
Right.
No. And nothing else is that the case. Right.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that, a person's castle, a home is their castle, right? I don't have to tell you why I don't like you wearing shoes in my house.
Right.
If you come in my house, take your shoes off. If you don't want to do that, get out. If
Right.
you don't get out, I call the police and you're now trespassing.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And
don't
the police
chew
literally
gum.
say,
don't wear
right.
Don't wear a yellow shirt in my house. Whatever. Like,
whatever it is, I can make whatever rule I want, and you have one of two choices.
And it doesn't have to be reasonable.
Or get out.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I feel like that's how we should treat women's bodies. No, the idea of sexual assault, like, any person should be able to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and should have the responsibility to know this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And then we should have to respect that, because you got two choices: keep messing with them or go find somebody else.
Yeah. So, okay, so I have two questions, and then we probably both have to run. Because we could probably talk about this, and we did talk about this for like 3 days. Yeah.
Exactly. All of our talks always go way longer than we
So, okay, one problem that I see happening is that I think that as a society, we are confused about whether it is illegal to sexually assault someone or not. And I think that there is an underlying question about that, where some people genuinely believe that sexual assault, rape does not exist, right? On one end of the spectrum. some people believe on the other end that anytime a person is unhappy about a past experience, that is rape, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
there's all this spectrum in between that the laws don't adequately
Right.
like
Which they
clarify.
could never actually adequately do, right? And
Yeah.
if you look at any of the laws that we have, like we have nuisance laws, they are very defined, right?
Yeah.
It's not a subjective standard. There has to be like we have dealt with this and we talked about this in tort law. You deal with these issues because right, we've got intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress. We have to outline these things in the law because it is a gray area. There is a spectrum. One person getting slapped in the face is a sign of endearment. Another person getting slapped in the face is the biggest, uh, um, it's throwing
Offense.
down the gauntlet,
Yeah.
right? It's the
Yeah.
biggest thing you can imagine. And so it's not a question of, and that's the reason why we have to go into this deeper inquiry. That's the reason why we have to ask those questions, which, given the nature of sexual intercourse and sexual intimacy, makes this so crazy because this is one of the most intimate and vulnerable times that human beings have with another human being in the best of times, right? Now,
Yeah.
you got some people who are comfortable being open and vulnerable with everybody. You got some people who, because of religious beliefs, because of spiritual beliefs, because of cultural beliefs, feel like this is something that you only share with a very special person, right? And the nature of the act, all of these things that go into sex being different. And what I like about the Me Too movement, what I like about the conversations that we're having now is that we're stirring up all the muck so that everybody can see that this is clear glass. And so we're having those conversations. I'm so happy that we're having the conversations, and I hope that we can create a space where we don't have to agree on everything to agree on kind of the fundamentals and the bedrock principles, which we've always agreed upon in this country. We've always agreed upon everybody's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to their right to life, liberty, and property, to the fact that my body, since the 13th Amendment was passed, my
Right.
body is mine to own. No one
Right.
else can own me or put me into any type of servitude. Since Roe versus Wade became Supreme Court precedent, a woman's body is her domain. With
Right.
certain exceptions, the government can keep you from getting a third eye put on your ear or something like that, right? And from cloning and certain things like that. But for the most part, the government says your body is between you and your doctor. We agree about these things, and now what we've got to do is take that a step further, and we've got to have the hard conversations of when somebody is in my space and I don't want them in my space, what is my responsibility as a citizen, as a part of this republic? And then what is the responsibility of the rest of the citizenry to come to my aid if I am unable? And what does that
Mhm.
mean to be unable to do my duty, right? Is it
Right.
beyond the scope of what I should be doing, or is it just something that for some reason I wasn't able to do?
And
And
I think
there's a
that,
oh, go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead. No.
well, I think that a lot of women have taken the Kavanaugh confirmation as a sign that we don't care about women's bodily integrity. We don't care about women being violated, that it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I was sort of saying before you came on that my perspective on it is that has historically been the reality. Like women have been
Mm-hmm.
property in the past and women have not, like rape was not illegal until the later part of the last century. And like
Right.
this
And
is
even
a,
it's a property crime.
yeah. And this is like a new thing where we are caring about it. And so to me, seeing a woman with so much integrity go and testify in front of the Senate and seeing all these women talk about our experiences openly is progress. And I think that we have the
Mm-hmm.
tendency to see it as to see the Kavanaugh confirmation as like reverting to
A step
something, a
back.
step back. But I
Yeah,
think that the whole way the process has happened has brought so much up and is progress.
I agree. And can I add to that that I am so proud and like I applaud Dr. Ford because of the fact that what she said was, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people on the left and the right don't pay attention to. What she said was, I have a duty as an American to
Yeah.
tell truth, they can do with it what they want. Her goal was never, don't put him on the court. Although that was her personal belief.
Yeah.
Her goal was to do her duty as an American, to give us the information that we need as a country to make a decision. Now, as with all types of things in government, people make decisions that you like, people make decisions that you don't like, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why that happens. A lot of times it's got to do with money and politics.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to do with the underlying issue.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we're not celebrating what she did as an American enough. She stood up and felt like she had to stand up and say something because she knew something that everybody else didn't know.
It's patriotism to me.
It's patriotism. It's her doing her civic duty.
Yeah.
And that, for me, like, cause citizenship and civic duty, we talked about this, like, that's my big thing. The social contract is my big thing. The reason I want people to be better leaders, the reason I want people to be able to teach and to train and to help people to develop the greatness that is within them, is because we are interdependent as a society. Yeah. I need you to be your best self so that I can be my best self, so that we can be our best selves. That is what she did for us. Even if, whether Kavanaugh got confirmed or not, I knew was gonna turn more on politics than it did on facts.
Yeah.
But I am so proud to be in a country where citizens step up like she did.
I totally agree. Okay, so this is my last question for you, and I probably should have asked this to you earlier because I think it is an important question, but I see a lot of debate and I get pushback a lot about this as like a white lady getting involved in issues or not getting involved in issues, and I'm always like gonna say my opinion to whoever it is. So
I love you for it.
But so there were some posts that went out that said women and girls should start taking a knee when you hear the national anthem. And I saw it, and so I reposted it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I initially had the thought, why are we not doing that? Like, why? I'm curious about this. Why haven't, like, and I don't do sport. The last time I heard the national anthem somewhere was like 4 years ago, probably. So it's not like a very present issue for me. I'm very not knowledgeable about this. And so I got a lot of pushback that was like, this is a way that white women commandeer a movement for people of color. Taking a knee is a Black Lives Matter issue. So if we're going to take a knee, I even had some people saying, I'm not going to take a knee. I'm going to turn my back. I'm going to do a different protest. I'm going to avoid that because it's not my issue. And my perspective on that, like my initial thought was not, oh, we should take away this issue and redirect away from Black Lives Matter. It was, we should be supporting this. Like, are we allowed to support this? Should we, why haven't I thought of this before? Should white women should be supporting this Black Lives Matter issue? And so I'm curious what you think about the hijacking the issue or supporting. Do you have an opinion about this?
Right. I do, actually. And it goes kind of into, as I have an opinion on everything. Yeah. But I want to say two things about this. The first is that the people that push back against other people coming into the group, I think oftentimes the people who are doing the pushing back don't understand what the purpose of the pushing back would be. And so they make arguments that are disingenuous or that are not actually at the heart of it. And that they don't understand their own movement. Because here's the thing, taking a knee was not to say Black Lives Matter.
Right.
The whole purpose of taking a knee was to say, I cannot stand in unity with all of you all who are doing this thing, because this demonstration, standing for the flag and saluting and putting your hand over your heart, is pledging fidelity to an idea that I don't think this is the only thing that we're unified on. That's basically what Kaepernick was saying. We're not unified about taking care of lives and taking care of Black people and police brutality and all these types of things. Right. This is fake unity. And so instead of showing fake unity, I'm going to show the difference in what we're doing and how we're living by doing something different.
And it also didn't
another part of the history that I think a lot of people.
Oh, you're going to say what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. Another part of the history that I don't think a lot of people know is that Colin Kaepernick was talked to by a Green Beret
Right.
who was explaining to him that sitting on your butt during this national anthem is disrespectful. Like you've got to be doing something to say that you still respect everything that the flag stands for if you're going to be protesting about us standing up and talking about the flag, which is where taking a knee came from, and which is where a lot of the other demonstrations, walking out locked in arms and everything else, it came from us saying, I want to speak about this disunity during this period of time to make people aware. And the interesting thing about it is, in a respectful manner. And the interesting thing about it is the point that he was making was America stands for something that we're not achieving.
Yeah.
And I believe the America that flag is supposed to represent, and I'm only going to stand and act like we represent it once it does.
When we do, yeah.
Exactly. And so if that is your idea of this movement, to say, I don't want other people who believe that America is not standing for what it's supposed to stand for to join into my movement, is, again, it's a scarcity mentality. It's an idea that we can only focus on one thing at a time. Instead, if you look at the Voting Rights Act, if you look at any civil rights legislation or anything that happened with regard to civil rights, there were homosexuals that were involved, there were whites, there were women, there were blacks. Abolition, same thing. There were lesbian women, homosexual men, etc. There were the marginalized people of society who joined together, and now they may have been under one banner focusing on one issue, but they realized the commonality of that issue across the spectrum. If you look at the ladies who worked for women's suffrage, they also were abolitionists because they understood that marginalizing one group just allows them to marginalize us more.
Right. And so my thought, if I'm going to turn my back and not take a knee, is sort of like saying rejecting the police brutality.
Exactly. It's not solidarity, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's not solidarity. And the whole idea is there has to be a conversation. And in America, we don't like having conversations. We like having shouting matches, right? But there has to be a conversation of how these two organizations, how can these two movements, what is the commonality, right? And how can we walk together? How can we go and be a united front? How can we find the synergistic way to make change instead of me trying to fight it on this side and you trying to fight it on this side, right?
And it being a competition at all. Yeah.
Exactly. Right? Because here's the thing. If I get what I want, your world is better. If you get what you want, my world. So why am I thinking that I gotta get mine first?
I wonder what you think about this too, because the other pushback I got, or like one of the comments, was that white women have the second largest platform after white men. True. And I take a little issue with that because I think that Black men have historically made greater progress more quickly than all women have. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I push back on that historically just because if you actually look at property laws, if you look at, for example, Civil Rights Act, right? And if you look at all of the provisions of affirmative action, the Civil Rights Act and everything, and you look at who has benefited economically, if you take where they were in the 1940s and 50s as an economic class, and you look at them now, if you take Black men, Black women as a group, Latinos, Asians, or white women as a group, and you look at who grew the most over that period of time, white women's plight in America has grown the most over that period of time, even though that was a law that was not designed specifically for white women.
I think that also economically, white women have always been in a superior position, often because they were property of white men who had money, right?
Right, but what I'm talking about is if you look at
the progress.
The progress, if you look at it and just look at the exponential, growth from their positions. Now, here's the deal. That's not to say that white women are not struggling, right? It's still 78 cents on the dollar.
And that's not to say that Black men have it all good either. Right. But I think if you look at Black men could vote before white women could vote. We had a Black male president before we're comfortable having a female president at all. I mean, I think that I take your point and I think you're right, but
And I think that one of the arguments that people will say is that the glass ceiling is a bit harder. And one of the things that I want you to pay attention to is this is an argument that I I don't think that we have to say that black men have it harder than white women. Or
Right,
white women have it harder.
It's like a race to the bottom or something, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, because there's counterpoints to all that. Like, black men got the right to vote way before white women did, but white women were voting way before black men were. You know what I mean? Like, in reality, right? Black men were getting lynched when they went to try to vote, even though they had the right to vote.
It sucks for all of us. Yeah.
Right? It sucks all around. And even to that point, I think that some things that you look at when you see those kind of juxtapositions, right? And I talk about this a lot when we talk about slavery, right? Like, one of the crazy things that you think about was being a white man in the South was thought to be a really good thing. But what you realize is making black slaves was a ploy for rich whites to not have to give poor whites anything else, because we gave you that you're better than a black person. So we've given our concession, and now you're going to be a sharecropper. You're going to live the same horrible lives that the blacks down there live. Like, if you look at the Civil War, and one of the things, a great movie to look at with regard to this is The Free State of Jones. Matthew McConaughey. It's a phenomenal movie, and it kind of talks about the fact that, like, there were a lot of Southern whites who were fighting the Civil War who didn't own slaves, didn't own land, didn't own any of that type of stuff, and were pressed into service. Young boys, they had to leave their farms. They took a lot of their goods and all the rest of that type of stuff. Like, we paint this false narrative of the other, whoever's not our marginalized group, they got it so much better than we got.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the fact that we don't have equity and parity with the group that we should have equity and parity with, group who is oppressing whoever else is involved.
Well, and I have to say that my initial reaction to the idea that women have the second largest platform, or white women have the second largest platform or whatever, is like, I feel like my platform is important, but I also feel like your platform is important. And if we're saying, like, oh yeah, black women don't speak out, have a white woman do it for you, have a black man do it for you because your platform isn't important, that to me is so.
And I think that's a miscommunication of the message. And somebody just commented, the movie is Free State of Jones. Matthew McConaughey is in it, and there's a number of people that are in it. I can't remember their names right now, but it's a great movie. Okay. But the other piece about it was, here's the funny thing. There are things that white women can do to advance black people that black people can't do. And there are things that black men can do to advance white. For example, I'm a black man. I'm 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, right? 210 if I tell the truth.
Yeah.
So I can do a lot more to teach you self-defense as a smaller white woman than another small white woman might be able to do. Yeah. Especially because even if she can teach you self-defense, she can't give you the same type of resistance a 6 foot, 210 pound man can give you to let you feel comfortable and confident that what you're doing is actually working. Similarly, you as a white woman can go into a lot of places that I will never get to go into and have a lot of confidence that even now, as a Marine Corps officer, as a lawyer, as a former dean's fellow, as a business owner, I'm not welcome in the conversation.
Totally.
Right? And because of that, it's not that your platform is bigger, but based on numbers, white women reach more white men than black men do.
Right. Totally.
And so for issues dealing with black men or black people, white women can push that forward a lot further. Yeah. But when white women are talking about white women's issues, guess what? You've been talking to that man about white women's issues for a long time. Yeah. Obviously, he might need to hear it from somebody else, right? And that's where other people can come in and make that. And we also need to remind ourselves of the agency of the white man. The woke white man, as a lot of people would like to call him, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people discount. I was just talking to a friend of mine at church the other day who was a counselor. And one of the things he was talking about was like, the place that he feels called to help are the marginalized communities. He's a mental health counselor. The marginalized communities that have higher incidence of mental health. Yeah. But one of the things that he feels like an outsider. He feels like, who am I to come and tell them how to deal with mental health? I'm the white guy, right? And so I talked to him about the fact that his platform is important because he is the person that can bridge the gap. He can speak white man, right? He can speak to contemporaries and to other people and make a problem that may seem like a marginal problem make more sense. Again, this is interdependence and synergy versus I got to work on my end and pull myself up on my bootstraps and you got to work on your end and pull yourself up.
I mean, I think there's also that intersectionality issue, though, of like where Black women, like people with disabilities who also are of color, like any kind of like their voice or their platform or whatever, to me is really crucial also, because I genuinely, like, I believe that all brains have discrimination, and like I've had I like LGBT issues. Like I am a cisgender like straight woman, and I have the privilege of just not even thinking, like forgetting to think about those things. And so having someone who has that voice, has that experience, to me is like crucial. So if we're saying, oh, their platform isn't that important, or white women don't get involved in what they're talking about, like I think that there is a way to like allow them to be on our platform, or to there's a word that I'm trying to think of, but like to promote their voice instead of promoting our voice that I want to be better at. But
and I don't even think it's so much the promoting of our voice versus their voice. Again, I think that one of the things that we have to realize is that, like, I used to tell my students this when I taught
amplify
Spanish.
That's the word I was
amplify. I like that. Yeah. But like when I taught Spanish, one of the things I used to tell my students all the time was Black history isn't Black history. Black history is American history.
Yeah. Women's history is American history.
Right. Women's history is American history. Like I am just as interested in the cool things that Marie Curie did and Mary Bethune-Cookman and all of these different people and Harriet Tubman. I'm just as interested in what they did as I am interested in what George Washington did and Abraham did, because those were people that made America what America is.
Yeah.
They are not like, white people don't get to claim George Washington be like, he's ours.
Right.
Right. Like he did stuff for all Americans. He is the fact that he left power and did what he did set a tone, and even for the world, if you would, right? And same thing with Barack Obama. Barack Obama was not the Black president. No. Barack Obama was the 44th president of the United States.
And he's one of the reasons I went to law school. I was like, somebody could be a cool person and go to law school. Maybe I'll do that.
Exactly.
Because I identify with him. Yeah.
Right. And this idea that I am limited by my color is us succumbing to the craziness and the fakeness of race.
Perpetuates it, I feel like.
Perpetuating it, right? Like I love the fact that, because my kids are mixed, I love the fact that my kids are like, I'm Black and I'm white. Like I'm not one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, I'm half my mama, half my daddy. Like that's how it works.
Yeah.
And that they can have those conversations and that they don't have to feel like they have to choose one or the other because of the world that we live in now. I know that there's all of the history about people having to choose, but then the other piece about it, which I think is even more important, that they feel comfortable embracing wholly both sides instead of feeling like, well, only this part of Black culture is my culture and only this part of white culture is my culture.
Or I'm excluded from both because I'm not.
Because I'm neither. Yeah. Right. Like it's that whole idea of both and instead of either or.
Yeah. So.
And that's how I feel like we should be with women's issues. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason that, and I love having had the experience of being a defense counsel, I also point out I was a company commander. Mm-hmm. So I was on the other side. I was on the prosecution side of deciding whether or not cases should go to trial, of whether those types of things as well. I was in those rooms having those conversations as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that being able to see both sides, legal training is so awesome because it allows you to see that both sides can have legitimate arguments and both sides can be talking bullshit, right? Like you can have both, right? There's parts of it that can make sense and there's parts of it that can be wrong. And being able to hold both ideas in your head and to compare them against each other is the nature of truly engaging with our fellow human beings, our fellow Americans. And that's our duty as citizens. It's not just to wholeheartedly, I believe you, I believe you. I'm going to listen. Yeah. I'm going to hear you. And I'm going to try my best to support you in what I feel like is right, is worthy, and is verifiable. And what's not, I'm going to be honest with you about so that I don't gaslight you, so that I don't give you the big head and think that it's good. And I think that's what they did, kind of bring it full circle, and then I got to run. Yeah. I think that's what they did with Kavanaugh. They let him think, like Donald Trump was like, we won, and all this rhetoric is, they let him think that he did the right thing.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that he did the right thing, regardless of whether he did the wrong thing.
Right. Totally. Okay. So tell people, or how can people get your book? How can people contact you?
Great question. Okay, so I think, and I don't know if you put the comment in this
had a
group,
comment, but then when I didn't have you, I took it down. So I'm gonna edit it.
No problem. Yeah. So there'll be a comment that Meredith's gonna copy over, that you can get a free copy of my book if you just go to, and it's tinyurl.com/roberts-free-book. You can get a copy of my book. Why can't people just do their jobs? You can also go, and if you're on Facebook, which you're watching this on, you can look at my hashtag Legacy Leaders group. And if you join the group, you can also get a free book, and there's some videos on there. I do a 7-part series and some other stuff, so you can find me. And then lastly, my email is Robert, kind of simple, at robertheath.co. Now it's .co, not .com. If you put .com, it won't go to me. So Robert at robertheath.co.
And you're also doing your Legacy Leadership 30-day.
Yes, yes, every day. Generally, I do them at 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. I'm doing 30 days of legacy leadership, Facebook Live. So tomorrow we're going to be tackling a topic from Melissa McDaniel, one of my fellow authors, who brought up leading in a multi-generational workspace. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow.
Nice. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's really
Thank you so much. I always enjoy talking with you. Yeah. It is phenomenal. Yeah. You are awesome and amazing, and for letting me run my mouth on your channel. So
I love it. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye.